G'day, g'day, g'day. It's Mathematical KM here. Remember their initials, not a title. Keith Malumbi. Coming to you with my final round in the ANU chess tourney. 60 minutes plus 30 seconds a move. I'm weighing in at FIDE 1450 and my opponent is 1550, so about 100 points uphill. I've got the white pieces coming in with a white hippopotamus, and my high-rated opponent is 13 years of age, so let's go. So we start with a queenside fianchetto, which when you got the white pieces, I'm thinking about it a bit. They really do need to protect that e-pawn initially. It makes it, I think, that much more likely you're going to get your full hippo thick-skinned out there, probably not against a three-pawn centre. And it's looking like a bit like a London, but with the black pieces coming across, but we keep going. Oh, that one was a bit of prophylaxis early in the piece, both the knight and the bishop. But needless to say, there we go. We've got our thick-skinned hippo. And so, where do we go from here? Interesting. Castling's the top move from Mr. Computer. But we're looking, this pawn is only protected by a knight. This pawn is protected by two pieces. So D pawn's our target pawn. There's nothing attacking our D pawn, so there's the flank pawn forward. And it's the second best, 0.05 between that and castling. So we play the second best move, the flank pawn push. And the opponent nimbly changes that pawn from having one defender to now it's got three defenders. So that's interesting. And computer wants me to just, and swap a flank pawn for a central pawn, get in and do it. That's what the computer wants. Otherwise, castling looks good. Or b4, which is just continuing to take space out there on the queen side. Now I can tell you I didn't play any one of those three moves. Being a bit stubborn here, I have brought in a third piece of my own, so it's 3 versus 3 on that D pawn, and the eval's right at 0 as well. He's moved his bishop forward because these two bishops are looking at each other, and now his bishop is protected by that knight. So that was, a bit of prophylaxis, caution on, and a wise move on his young head. Now again, just swap the flank for the centre is what the computer wants, or knight f3, which is bringing another one round, shifting our attack, or even, and this is interesting with he's got 3 defenders. Find it hard. Knight takes d5. Can't quite really see how that's working. But in my head I was thinking a little bit too fixated on a target again. Typical problem. I thought 1, 2, get rid of one of the defenders, then we'll have 3 versus 2. So starting that, it wasn't the wisest of plans. Moving those pawns out in front of where my king will be, or you'd think my king will be if I was to castle that way. And the best move for my young friend, and it's a case of the only right move by the look of the computer, -1 versus 0, is to play d4. And he, of course, plays it. And the best move for me is to swing this knight to here, where it's protected by 3 pieces, and is looking very hard at a bishop and at a knight. Best move played. Now, for black to keep the advantage that he's sort of got, he wants to go knight takes knight. Second best is to take the pawn with his pawn, and third best is knight to d7. He plays the best move, knight takes knight. Obviously for me, I've got a choice of bishop takes or knight takes. It depends on what do I want to be left with there. I sort of chose to be left with a bishop, and so therefore take first with the knight, which is the second best. Takes. Was that his best option, leaving my knight alone for a moment? Yep. D times e3 is actually second best. f5 would have been better. But he takes. For me, the best move is takes. And so essentially what's happened is my opponent has lost a central pawn. I've lost a flank pawn. And it gives me a half-open file towards where his king is. And I see that 1.9, but, you know, there are benefits I can see in my position. He moves his queen forward. See, what he should have been on the offensive there with f5 while my knight was still there. And kicking my knight even into taking something, and then he could have taken the bishop before the bishop was protected. So that's a little bit of a miss for my opponent there with getting the queen there. And that's the piece that's hanging. Queen e2 protects the bishop and will allow that knight to go off and take things. Played. f5's still his best move, getting on the offence, and he's played it, but he's a move too late for catching that bishop napping. And also g times f5, because these two pawns I'm going to have a harder time protecting or looking after, and also getting it out of the way is opening more lines towards his king. Best move, and it's back to a slight edge for white, is g takes f5. Not played. I decided to get rid of his bishops. So, takes. He took back with a pawn. Was that better or the queen for him to take it back with? Looks like queen would have been slightly better. Or even coming in with the bishop to g2, but not that much of a difference. Is it a slight edge to black or to white? The computer keeps changing its mind. It's obviously very small. So he takes the bishop. I take his other bishop. Now that only leaves me not with a bishop pair, but with only one bishop. But what a bishop. A bishop lined up on his king to a very nice square. Sure, there's some things in the way, but I think that's a good bishop to be holding on to. Now, I castle, get the king away, and also that was needful to join the two rooks to protect that rook from the queen, and it frees my queen up. I didn't have to go and put the queen in a different position. Okay, so he's threatening the c pawn, but it is fairly, I mean, even you can even count the queen. Is it a path to my king? Not so much. So in a way, I think I can take a move to, let's see if, the computer wasn't really chasing it, but let's get rid of that f pawn. He brings his knight in. Lining the rook up on his king. You know, we've got stuff that's happening. Shifted his other rook to line up here, and also on, I guess he's thinking, should he take that way? my B pawn is hanging. There's nothing protecting it. Don't think I find the move in, but I was thinking king forward one will, give that much more protection to the base of that little triangle. But for now, that's his little plan. What I thought about was, let's get on to that knight now. That would be sacking the knight. Is he really going to do that? And the answer was no, because he's seen a little bit of a half of a plan, which I've noticed as well, which is coming in at that hanging pawn, and it even comes with check. And what's more, when it's in there, comes with tempo on the queen. Not surprised that it jumped in there, but you'll see that nearly back at flat is okay. Let's get rid of my bishop for your knight and two double isolated pawns. Takes. Okay, this is move 25, and it's a bit weird that I actually spent probably 13 or 15 minutes thinking about this as much as anything, because I think it was annoying my little 13-year-old opponent, who his clock was on about 56. You're getting plus 30 seconds a move, and he had to wait. I was going through, do I sack a rook and then bring another rook across with check and be able to check with the queen when the kings come this way? But it was always nearly, and I couldn't quite, in the end I didn't think there was anything quite that good there for white. And now that we're doing the review, it's almost a relief to see that it's a tiny edge, but it's an edge to black, even though I've got this big attack going. King B2, that's in the same vein as remember thinking about King C2, but however you look at it, it's the king giving protection to this pawn. And I guess B2 would also give protection to that one, and the queen's and the rook have both got that one covered. So that would have been a nice defensive resource. Queen to C2 would have been saying, hey, you've got all these doubled pawns, and I think white's in better nick than you are, and bringing the queen across to C2. Let's just sort it out slowly and try and win with the pawns in the end game. And rook to G3 might have been thinking about getting the queen behind the rook. But let's forget all about that defensive sensible play. And it's increased the edge to black, minus 0.7. Obviously, he's got to deal with the mate in one threat, so I've made a threat. I was thinking a lot of the time about him stopping it with pawn forward, but I think that rook there is actually better. From there, he can't take me. He's lucky that if he does, it comes with check, because I'll have to take him back, so I guess he can take me. But if it didn't come with check, it would have been straight to checkmate. But it was throwing all my pieces at his king, as Ginger GM says. Now that was an interesting move, but not a good one, because I can pin. That's funny, taking it right now is a shortcut. It's not quite as good, but I'm definitely looking at queen here, pinning that rook and then hopefully taking it. His other rook comes across, and then which will then be pinned, bring the other rook. There's some life in the position and life towards white, and it's plus 1.8 there. And I played that best move, queen and pinning the rook. Queen to E6. So it's not desperation, but it's just seeking counterplay over here. And you'll notice there's only one move that works for me. If I play b times c4, that lets his queen and rook maybe in even more over there. The very best, which is +2 to white, is to take with the d pawn. Played. Okay, so he's had his crack at getting counterplay. He certainly can't take the hanging pawn now. He hasn't got time. Were he to do that, queen takes rook. And it's just looking bad from there. Yep. That would be not good. So what does he do? And plus 3.4 to fix. Here's the lesson for today. I think I've gone with a bit of a Thanos endgame motif for this game, but it could just as easily have been Dirty Harry, go ahead, take my queen. What I coulda, woulda, shoulda done, and you can see it's plus 3.71. What I did, I believe, was queen to d5, probably, but we'll have a look in a minute. But go ahead, take my queen, because this is beautiful. And the odds are that any human faced with this, I mean, it goes on at +4 for me if he takes my rook instead of the queen. But it would be putting his rook into that pin, and then I could bring my rook and it would go on, and it's at +4 for me. But the odds are he would take my queen. Check. He goes, check. And at this point, last game of the tournament, the guy's 100 points up on me. I would have taken the forced draw, even though it's plus 4.46, because it's not as easy as it looks. I could zip over and grab a pawn, but I don't think I'm going to be able to force it into a ladder mate. And with the level of confidence on the endgame play, I think that forced draw would have been a nice thing to sort of slam in there. But no, I have brought my queen. Let's go back a move. So it would have been lovely to take his F rook and say, go ahead, take my queen. Sadly, queen to d5, second best move, plus 0.3 to white. I played. He takes, only one move for me. C takes d5 is terrible. E takes d5 is played. And I think, what move are we up to there? 30. For about 4 moves, we can count these moves. How many moves I keep it on? It's a draw. So I take. He brings his rook down. I mean, it's threatening 2 of my pawns. My only good move to keep it, and we're on 1, this will be the second good move to keeping at a draw, is getting rid of a pair of rooks. Rook takes f7, played, so it's 2 moves of keeping it at a draw. King times f7, obviously. Rook f1 check is a draw, b4. Getting a third pawn forward, trying to get a pawn through. So he's still keeping it at a draw. And h4 is also quite close to even. What did I play? I played over to threaten his pawn and let him have one of his choice. Bit of a mistake. Solomon, the endgame course, coming soon. You've got to help me through this sort of thing. But he takes one of my pawns. I take his pawn. He should take the h3 pawn, but he slams a pawn forward. There's one move for me, which gets it back to close to even, and that is h4. Played. Third move of keeping it even in this precarious endgame. He brings that there. There's a number of dead even moves, one of which is h takes g5. Played. Fourth move of 0.00. He plays that. Rook to g4 is pretty good. King to d2 is worse, but it's still pretty close to even. And rook to e4 also. What did I do? Pawn forward, but that's 0.00, so computer hadn't thought about that one. So it's 5 moves of 0.0. Rook forward, in between my two pawns. Rook to e4 is 0. King to d2 is 0. a5 is 0. And after 5 moves of keeping it at a draw, I keep it at a draw for a 6th move. So we've got 6. Keep one there for 6. He should take a4 to get that 0.08 of an edge, which he does. King c3 is the move to play. Or rook to e4. King d3 is a bit worse. King e3. Oh, it's creeping up towards minus 0.15. It's still fairly even. Trying to get the king over towards that pawn. So that was 7 moves of keeping it basically at 0.00. And it's the old mathematical KM that cracks under the 13-year-old's pressure with bang. And look at that. 7.9 to black. He takes, I take, he takes, I take. If only his king was 1 square further, but I can't get my king to here. He can get his king to there. And a king and a pawn can't get him out while he's got other moves to make. I know I can stop that pawn. Maybe I could stop that pawn, but what I can't do is stop both pawns. And m16, or mate in, that's when I shook his hand. So, really disappointed I didn't do the go ahead, take my queen rook move. That would have been a beauty. But following up from that, I need to get better at holding the draw in situations like this. 7 moves of keeping it flat and then cracking under the pressure. The next chess course I'm getting is Solomon Riddell, the Chess Giant's Endgame course. Coming out soon and pretty comprehensive, and it's going to train up this KM. Not GM, KM. Keith Malumbi. Okay, let's before we go, have a quick look at the review. 77 to 81, not that bad. Both played some good moves. Nice. He played a blunder. I didn't play any blunders, which is something. And that's quite low for me for the opening in this tournament. It's mostly been in the 90s, but 79.7, 77.8. If nothing else, in all 6 games, the Hippopotamus has been a winning opening in terms of Chess.com's accuracy. 76 to 79, so pretty tight there as well. And then 73 to 87. Yep, the endgame play is probably the main area I've got to brush up on. But quite the game. Just going to take this back to Beautiful position. It woulda, coulda, shoulda, but didn't. That would have been such a sweet move to play. Anyway, that was the last game of the ANU tournament. And like, subscribe, and keep watching.